"I'm sorry, sir, but you don't exist." I had just recently purchased my house and my old washer and dryer wouldn't fit, plus they sucked and my wife hated using them, so she sent me on a mission to buy a new set. I didn't do my research, and as I'm standing in the Lowe's appliance department coming to grips with what I'm up against, my contractor neighbor walked up behind me. He helped me pick out the exact units I was going to purchase. I bought them, and then life got weird for a few minutes. When I got to the truck with my 2 large boxes, there stands my neighbor waiting for me. I thought he was waiting to help me load them, but he just looked at the boxes and said something like, "That's a gas dryer. We don't have gas." I bust his balls for a couple of minutes about helping me pick the wrong units out, and it was as normal an interaction as I could have had. I went inside to do the return walk of shame on the items I literally never even left the parking lot with. My neighbor walked to his truck. I'm at the return counter. The girl behind the register asked me my name. I told her and handed her my receipt from 5 minutes prior while explaining the situation. Without even looking up at me, she says again, "Name." I tell her my name a second time and she says nothing while typing into the computer. In comes my neighbor to the return desk with a gallon of paint. He waits in line behind me, saying nothing. The girl behind the register looks up at me and says, "Name, sir?" I tell her my name for a third time, pointing to the receipt on the counter, and try to explain the situation again. She types into the computer some more, and for what was probably a solid minute, says nothing at all. Another girl at the return desk finishes with another customer and comes over to help. The new girl says to me, while they both stare into the computer screen, "Name?" A fourth time I give them both my name. Without taking their eyes off of the screen, the new girl says, and I shit you not, "I'm sorry, sir, but you don't exist." I got sort of lightheaded after she said that because I was already thinking how strange this was. I said back, "I don't exist, or I'm not in your system." Without answering me, the second girl says to my neighbor, "Sir, I can help you over here," and moves to the next register as my neighbor walks past me and without another word to me returns his paint and walks out the door. Then, almost as if nothing weird had happened, the first girl just says, "My name, here's your return. You'll have to purchase the new ones and we'll refund you for the ones you mistakenly purchased." Without even going back to appliances, there behind me stands a guy with the units I needed on a dolly ready to help me buy and load them into my truck. My neighbor was gone. But when I asked him about it, he didn't think there was anything weird about the whole thing. I, on the other hand, had an existential crisis and only barely managed to hold it together. They dialed the wrong number and called my phone. I was at work in a hospital and had a room with an elderly husband and wife who both had pneumonia. It's unusual to have both husband and wife admitted at the same time. Later in the shift, I got a call on my cell phone and I didn't recognize the number and let it go to voicemail. Later I listened. It was something like, "Hey Jeffrey, it's your Uncle Bob. Looks like your granny and grampy are sick and both in the hospital. Give me a call back." That's a bit weird, but whatever. I decided to call the guy back with the hospital phone just to say that Jeffrey didn't get the message. Uncle Bob answered and was glad I called to clarify. I then asked him what was the name of Granny and Grampy, and it happened to be the same elderly couple. I asked Bob what is Jeffrey's number, and it was 1 digit off from mine. So Bob misdialed Jeffrey's number by 1 digit, calling my cell phone, in order to discuss the sickly couple who I was taking care of at that time. I cannot imagine the odds of that happening. Weirds me out when I think about it. Store disappeared was never there. One day, my mother and I were visiting a town a few hours from home as a little weekend getaway. They have a downtown that is full of shops and restaurants and such. We were walking through one day, and on the corner of one of the streets sat a few shops clustered together that looked like they were brand new built. One of the stores was a Thomas Kincaid store with all his paintings, which my mom is absolutely in love with. It was a small gallery with a store to purchase all of his pieces. We lost our home to a big wildfire a few years ago, and my mom lost her Kincaid painting that was hanging in the living room, which was just a small one that wasn't very popular of his. When we walked right in, the first painting straight in front of our faces was the painting that we had in the living room. We were a bit shocked and weirded out, but we continued to stroll around and eventually ended up in the store. The cashier was incredibly nice. She stated that his family opened this because Thomas used to visit the town often. We asked her if the store was temporary just because it was an art gallery, and my mother didn't have enough money at the time to replace her painting. The lady said no. Thomas himself left money aside to open up a shop for him. My mother told her that we wanted a painting eventually and had the lady write down her number so we could call when we had the money. She also took my mother's number just in case the painting sold. We left and went back home. 3 months later, we got our wildfire money and headed to the town to get the painting. No answer on the phone call, though. We walked through the downtown and walked up the small hill. There was no building or store anymore. It was just gone. There was no construction anywhere or anything. It just seemed like it poofed into thin air. We were so confused. We went into the candy store that faced the shop and asked the cashier if she knew what happened to the store. She looked at us confused and said she's worked there for years and that lot has always been empty. At this point, we were absolutely confused. We searched the internet and the yellow book pages. Absolutely nothing. We just shrugged it off and then went home. A few months passed again and my mom got a call. It was the lady and she was asking if we were still interested in ever coming back. At this point, we were genuinely freaking out. My mom double-checked with her the address and everything. So we planned another little trip to head there. And when we walked to the same place we had walked a few months ago, there it stood. We asked the same lady if they had moved locations or anything within the past few months, and she looked at us confused. She said they have always been there. We bought the painting and left. No clue what happened there. We are still so weirded out and shocked. I saw the post about someone feeling like the world was rendering. Okay, so someone told me about this Reddit. I finally gave myself a chance to look. Someone had a post that was similar to my own. I was with an old friend and we were just finished a workout at the gym. We get in his car and head toward our neighborhood. We lived in the same area. And as we got on the main street, everything got real. Slow. I mean slow. Everything felt in slow motion. The music got slower in the car. It felt like we hit a giant trampoline wall, and it was slowing us down exponentially. Suddenly we broke free. Everything returned to normal. For a brief moment I told myself I must be dehydrated from the workout or something. But when I looked over at my friend who was driving, I was immediately horrified. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "What was that, bro?" And I said, "I don't know, man. What the hell happened?" He described it exactly as I felt it. A stupid fight over a girl ended our friendship afterwards. But we both share that phenomenal experience. My hair is standing up. Anyone else feel this? It was in 2010. Husband says I'd told him something before I'd even found out. A few years ago, my best friend and fellow English teacher texted me that one of my students had been arrested for indecent exposure on the bus. I was shocked, because I would never have imagined this student doing that. On the same day I received the text, my husband and I went to hang with some friends. We were sitting on their couch when I remembered the story of my student's arrest. I said to my husband, "Hey, one of my students got arrested." My husband said, "I know, on the bus, for indecent exposure." "How did you know?" I asked. "You told me last week," he said. I tried to explain to him that I had just learned about it, and if I had known last week, I would have already told my best friend. The fact that she didn't know until that day when she texted me tells me I wasn't having some memory lapse. But my husband insisted that not only had I told him, but we'd searched on his office computer to see if it had made the news yet. I cannot explain how my husband knew this story beforehand, but the fact that he specified the charge and location before I could reveal those details tells me he knew. And searching for it online is exactly what I would have done, except I didn't. Was it an alternate reality he experienced? No clue.